Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Fatwa with Fakhruddin. In this podcast, I will be explaining how to best incorporate world religions and culture into public school curriculums as to best promote tolerance and diversity. So why am I doing this? Well, that is one of these very short questions that require an essay to answer. I guess to start, I am deeply disappointed by Conestoga students' ignorance of Islam. The views of this sacred and widespread religion are either completely negative or near non-existent. And I mean, Islam is practiced by over 1 billion people. It is the second largest religion in the world, second only to the kafir followers of Isa ibn Maryam. I think giving Conestoga students the options to take courses like AP Quranic Studies would be helpful so they can become more aware of the world religions and their cultures. Remember, according to an authentic hadith, if they choose to walk the path of darkness, they will fall down the pit of darkness for 70 years. And what is the pit, you ask? It is reserved for those who say, oh, I can learn Tawheed in just 10 minutes. It is Jahannam. All the real scholars agree on this. So, in my view, for both practical and religious reasons, it is necessary that we become more aware of Islam. Another reason is definitely the loss of moral fiber in our society. Like, we have become so focused on our materials and things that we forget what is truly important. One of the good things about religion is that it reminds people that there is something bigger than themselves. But these days, people run away from that. They want their iPhones and Starbucks and concert tickets. Everything has just become a race for who has more stuff. And because people think that stuff is so important, there is very little they won't do to get it. Nowadays, everything is permissible. Everything is halal. Everything is Allah alayhi wa lahim. Look at what happened with prom. People were so concerned to go to a social. In Islam, we say fitna. People were so concerned with going to a fitna event that they threw caution to the wind. Okay, so like everyone goes to prom with no modesty, right? Modesty is as scarce as coconut water in the desert. And look at what happens. Everyone is struck with a plague. Then people complain about getting sick, but you just went to a fitna gathering. I mean, seriously, if you got sick after going to prom and complained, you are like the man who puts the kindling next to the fire and goes, oh, mashallah, it lights. Anyway, I just think that we really need to adjust our priorities to be more considerate and aware of others. And there is also a lot of misinformation out there by so-called imams. These drive-through sheikhs get very popular on the internet, telling easy lies about Islam to kafirs who slurp it down like diseased camels raging with thirst. They are always saying things like, you do not have to do the 5 daily prayers, and oh, Allah knows I meant 5, so I only had to do 3. These people disgust me, trying to water down and trivialize our greatest right, the right to worship Allah, which is the right of all people. And I see some of this new Islam, scholars refer to as liberal Islam, becoming more popular. What even is a liberal Muslim? There are no liberal Muslims in Islam. We are completely devoted to Rasulullah and Allah. Another thing that caused me to choose this is kind of related to what I just mentioned. There were some studies from the Islamic University of Medina, which is like a university of real scholars and imams. But I was legitimately, I was distressed. I couldn't even finish wudu, like it was serious. So basically, these scholars found that only 18% of Americans are aware of what the Quran offers, thinking of it as a religious instruction manual rather than the holy message of Allah salawatullahi alayhi wasallam, given by his chosen prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Truly, we have lost our way in the public sphere, disregarding the founding values that have made our societies great. Shaitan and his shayateen, Allah curse them, have filled our hearts with pride, making us think that it was only by our own ingenuity and cleverness that this great society was built. Astaghfirullah. I hope to learn how our schools can look back and reflect on the past in a respectful manner, learning and growing from it as the fig tree grows and prospers from the summer rains. Considering this, I produced the following research question. How should the United States public school districts incorporate religious information in order to increase awareness and tolerance for world religions and culture? The first source that I turned to was the first source for any inquiry, the holy, almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing, timeless, and world-turning Quran. The article I found was a Time magazine article called Let's Teach About Islam in Our Schools. It was published on December 23, 2014 by Eric H. Yoffe. Yoffe is a writer and lecturer and was president of the Union for Reform Judaism from 1996 to 2012. In the article, Yoffe asserts that American public schools should teach about Islam because Americans have a profound ignorance about Islam. He further asserts that the rationale for such ignorance is caused by a non-stop 24 hours news media portrayal of Muslims as radical and intolerant. Then Yoffe considers the plausibility of his recommendations. America has a clear separation between religion and government, which he admits to, but cites the 1963 landmark Supreme Court case, Abington v. Shemp, that allows for a study of religion in public schools as a means of awareness. Lastly, Yoffe asserts that because of the spotlight placed on Islam in American life due to the 9/11 war on terror, responsive wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, teaching the true values of Islam are now necessary. He concludes that a newfound awareness would help continue America's unique identity as a multi-religious coexisting nation. In conversation with Yoffe is scholar Dina Musa. Musa wrote the February 2021 article, "Schools Teach About Islam and Are Accused of Indoctrination," in the Christian Science Monitor. The credibility of this source is mixed. However, I have determined that this article is in fact credible enough for me to analyze. The Monitor is a publication that does its research rather than saying, "Oh, I can write an article concerning Islam in just 10 minutes." Musa, Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's blessings be upon her, begins her article by offering the backstory of Ilika Datsetten Foley, the current CEO and executive director of Visions Inc., which is a nonprofit training and consulting organization specializing in diversity and inclusion. She offers her input and stresses the importance of diversity and tolerance. Her sentiment is extended by Michael Kurst, Professor Emeritus of Education at Stanford University, former president of the California State Board of Education, an honorable imam to any practitioner of Islam. Musa then illustrates how at Chatham Middle School in New Jersey, 7th grade students in a world cultures and geography class learned about the tenets of Islam. However, one woman named Libby Hilsenrath complained to the school district and appeared on Fox News. The article then describes how in 2018, Hilsenrath sued the Chatham School District with the help of Thomas More Law Center, whose aim is to protect America's Judeo-Christian heritage and moral values, and confront the threat of radical Islam, which they say has already infiltrated many sectors of society, including the schools. These are complete and utter lies. I can think of no circumstance in which radical Islam has infiltrated schools. Not one time, not two times, not 3, 4, 5, 6, nor possibly 7. The infiltration, they claim, was a 5-minute video introduction to Islam that included statements like Allah is the one God, the Quran is a perfect guide for humanity, and may God help us all find the true faith, Islam. The article then describes how Hilsenrath argued that the instruction was incentivizing students to convert to Islam. Firstly, this untrue. The school was simply educating students about the religion to encourage tolerance. Secondly, even if the secular, predominantly Christian school was for some reason trying to get students to convert, this would be a good thing. It would save little Allahideen from Jahannam. The pious and honorable Imam, Judge Kevin McNulty, Allah's blessing be upon this man, see in his ruling, there is, to be sure, a line to be drawn between teaching about religion and teaching religion. On this record, I must conclude that the school did not cross that line. The article then concludes with anecdote from a former Jewish student who claims that the ethnic studies help more people be aware and tolerant of his Jewish religion. Although I have recommendations, Islamic studies work. Further evidence comes from my next source, an interview, the wise scholar Sheikh Asim al-Hakim. Sheikh Asim is an imam from Jeddah's Aziz Mall Masjid in Saudi Arabia. He matriculated with a master's in hadith. He has been spreading the word of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at this role for 22 years. He is one of the most pious men I have ever had the blessings to meet, and I was honored to have spoken to him. Sheikh Hasim, what do you think public schools here in the United States have done to educate children about Islam?
The government has insisted to teach very young children about the importance of respect and tolerance for people who are different. This includes respect for Muslims.
Our interview began with the obligatory Assalamu alaikum, and then I asked the Sheikh what information he knew about Islamic teachings in the West, and he accurately described the push to educate the shirk and kafir about the Prophet's path in order to promote acceptance. I brought up how this is especially needed following the intolerance seen after 9/11, when many Muslims were targeted despite zero involvement of any form with Al-Qaeda. He responded by mentioning how these attacks and misconceptions led to us Muslims losing our identity and culture, ultimately disunifying us. I agreed. After this point, the Sheikh and I moved on to discussing on what information about Islam should be taught as to give to students the best idea of it. However, we maintained that it was imperative to not oversimplifying. as this is a major sin that sends you straight to Jahim. What Sheikh Asim, Allah's blessings be upon him, of course, then it concluded was that a basic introduction should consist of teaching 5 pillars: Shahada, Salat, Zakat, Psalm, and Hajj. It should also include some basic history of the life of the Prophet Salawatullahi alayhi wasallam and the Ummah. Lastly, the Sheikh and I affirmed that we would make one mention the tricks of shaitan, but still focus on the ways of Allah. I found our interview to be very engaging, and I think the points will be very useful for Muslim shirk and kafir. With all sources considered, I have found that in order to increase awareness and tolerance for world religions and culture, American public school districts should moderately incorporate religious information into social studies classes. Such information should cover all the major religions of Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, and of course Islam. Jazakallah khair. Signing off is Muhammad Mustafa Malik Khalid Ibn Isa Muhammad Khan Ishaq Muhammad Shakur Ismail Muhammad Farooq Al Durka Dahab.